Hi, friends. Good afternoon. It is 1:38 p.m. here in New York City. It is Tuesday, November 4th, 2025. Just in case you weren't here from the earlier live stream, we were talking about selecting books for a challenge. So my friends are doing this challenge and I'm a huge joiner. So when I hear about a challenge, especially a bookish challenge, I want to try it out. The challenge is called 10 Before the End. So it's identifying 10 books that you'd like to read before the end of the year and making some kind of a list or pile so that you can check it off and read as you read the books before the end of the year. So that's the goal. I have lots of small challenges, or no, I have lots of big challenges that I am participating in, or books that I have identified that I want to read, lots of book lists that I'm actively, sometimes not so actively. I have lots of book lists that I am trying to read towards. However, sometimes it gets a little cumbersome having a list over here and a list over there. So, what I am intending to do today is to curate a smaller subset of all of those lists, taking one book from each of those lists to make sure that I am making progress on those other reading goals, but identifying 10 books that I'd like to read before the end of the year so I can make that list. So I started checking off some of the lists that I want to that I want to read from. So here are just some of the reading goals that I have, and they're not necessarily limited to this year because most of these are not things that I can do in one year. So I have three authors that I identify. This is my reading journal. Welcome to my reading journal. So I have three authors that I identify that I want to read all of their works. They're three women: Muriel Spark, Barbara Pym, and Toni Morrison. And so these are all the books that these three authors have published. Novels, not short stories, not poetry, not essays. These are the lists. This is the list of the novels published by these three women authors. And so over a few years, I started this a couple of years ago. I have been going through the works of Muriel Spark, of Barbara Pym, and Toni Morrison. And at some point, I thought about reading them chronologically, like in order of publication. But a lot of these are not books that I own. So it's whenever I can get access to them from my library. Like like my local library doesn't have a lot of Muriel Spark books. So it's whenever I get one. I went to the library a couple of days ago, picked up some of the Barbara Pym books, and I own a couple of Toni Morrison that I haven't yet read. So I will be trying to incorporate these three women authors in that challenge where I'm trying to curate a list of 10 books that I want to read before the end of the year. So, if this is a challenge that sparks your interest, then I'm going to invite you to curate your own list. Find 10 books or 10 stories or 10 poems or 10 essays or 10 magazines or 10 things that you'd like to read before the end of the year, 10 children's books, 10 something. Or my friend is on here. Hi, Rumi24, Runwright Reads Girly. Yeah, this is a big list, but this is something that I am working towards over several years. So the orange means that I read it in a prior year. This so far is the only book that I have read from the three authors so far this year. This year has not gone according to my reading plan. This year has not gone according to plan in a lot of ways. So this is something that I'm doing over several years. I just want to work on them. So in this challenge, we're going to identify ways to move forward, make some progress on those lists. Good afternoon, Sharon. It is so good to see you. We are over here talking about reading challenges. So a challenge that is probably making the rounds here on BookTube. I just heard about it because my BookTube friends have been talking about it, and we're challenging each other to see if we can do it. We are identifying 10 books that we want to read before the end of the year, and making a plan for how we're going to read them. So I'm challenging you to do something similar. It doesn't have to be 10 books. It could be 3 books. It could be 2 books. It could be one book that you want to finish before the end of the year. It could be books that you started and kind of put aside and you want to make decisions on. Um, Challenging yourself to see if you can finish those goals by the end of the year, I guess. So it could be 10 poems, it could be 10 essays, it could be 10 short stories, it could be 10 things. 10 things. 10 before the end is the name of the challenge. So I saw Patrice from 2 Minutes on Books, Patrice Jones. She made a video on her channel, and Heidi from My Reading Life has been doing a version of that challenge, which she started a few months ago, where she's doing this TBR takedown. She identified 10 books from her physical stack of books that she hasn't yet read, and she was using this wheel to choose the order of the books that she would read. And she made decisions on the book. She didn't read all of them. Some of them were books that she decided she didn't want to read, and so they came off her physical shelf. But these are books that I think I'm making predictions. I'm thinking that I will read all of these because they are books that I'm interested in one for one reason or another. Yeah, the 10 before the end challenge. Yeah, I like the sound of it. It's also really good for me because, like I was saying, I have lots of book list of books that I want to read at some point. I'm trying to read. So this that I was showing you earlier, this is a list of 3 authors that I want to read all of their works. So I made a list for myself, made a couple of tables, 3 tables, one for Muriel Spark, one for Barbara Pym, and one for Toni Morrison. I included all the novels, all the fiction that these not fiction, all the novels that these 3 authors have published. And I don't want to read too much from the same author at once. Like, I could get 10 books from Barbara Pym and just read all 10 books one after the other. But I find that when I do that kind of reading immersion of one author, sometimes, unless the stories are very different, and unless the setting and the characters and the storytelling is so vastly different, then I will start to blend stories together. And I do not want to do that. I have done that. I made that mistake with another author sometime before, and I won't do that again. I'd like to spread them out. So I don't want to just take a month and just read 10 books from Barbara Pym. I don't want to do that. So the 3 books that I've identified from those 3 authors are so far, and I did want to try to at least use books that I have physical copies myself or e-copies myself, or I know that I will be able to get the books without issue. So for Toni Morrison, I have Song of Solomon, which I purchased, I think it was December last year. And I haven't read it yet. I haven't read it. So it's one of her earlier books. It is the 3rd novel that she published, I think. Her first book was Bluest Eye, which I have read. Her second book was Sula, which I read a long time ago and do want to reread, but I do not have a physical copy. This is her 3rd book, so I'm going to try to read this one. This is Song of Solomon. Is my Toni Morrison read on my list. For Barbara Pym, I got a couple of books from her, but I did make plans to buddy read The Sweet Dove Died with a couple of friends, where we have a little buddy reading group where we read some Barbara Pym together, which is probably why I've read so many of her books. And we were going to read this together, but one of the buddy readers is not sure that he can get access to the book right now. So I think I may have to read this on my own. But in any case, I'm putting this as my Barbara Pym selection. And then for Muriel Spark, because my local library doesn't have a lot of Muriel Spark, I requested a couple of titles. I'm still not sure which one I will get, but I requested The Comforters and The Bachelors. So I'll have to see which one comes in. So first 3 books on my list will meet. If I finish those 3 books, then I'll be able to cross off something off of this challenge. So that's what we are planning to do. Then I also have a challenge that I am trying to read towards. So Britta Bowler's channel is called Britta Bowler. But before, her channel used to be called The Second Shelf. I think if you type in The Second Shelf, it still brings her up. But I think her channel name now is her name, Britta Bowler. And Britta centers on books by women. So she's curated a list of 1,000, I think it's 1,001 books written by women from all around the world. So some of them are books that she has read and recommends, and some of them are books that she hasn't yet read, but she's identified. So if you are looking for a resource of books by women from all over the world, this is an excellent resource, and she has it available on Goodreads, and you can go through the list and see all 1001 books in their glory. So if you go to Britta's channel, the Goodreads link is always linked in the description box of her video, so you can see all the titles. And I went through the list. I don't think I've gone through the whole 1001 books, because I want to read some of the books that are on that list. And I went through like the first 200 or so, and I identified like 10 books that I want to read first. And then when I've completed those, then I'll go back and find 10 more. So I started doing this last year. Last year, I made a list of 10 books, and I read some of them. I didn't read all. So this year, I started off with 10 books, including some of the ones from last year. And so this one up here is my list of books that I have taken from Britta's 1001 books. So some of the books that I have read so far from her list was My Brilliant Career by Miles Franklin, Zami by Audre Lorde, and The Lover by Marguerite Duras. Miles Franklin is from Australia. Audre Lorde is an American with some Caribbean background. And Marguerite Duras, I think the book was set in Vietnam, if I'm not mistaken, was set in Vietnam because the author was someone whose family had gone to Vietnam during the occupation there. So a couple of books that I have in mind to read from that list include Love, Anger, Madness, which is by Haitian author Marie Vo Chauvet, which I own a copy. So I think that is the book that I will be putting on my list from Britta's 1001 books. If not, then I will probably choose Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe, which Harriet Beecher Stowe is an American woman. I don't have to go to Britta's list to read that, but it is on her list, and it's a book that I'd like to read at some point. So I may do that one. Other books that are on here include Cold Comfort Farm by Stella Gibbons, which I do not have a copy of. Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm, which I think sounds like the kind of book that I'd want to read right now, but I don't have a copy. The author is Kate Douglas Wiggins. So Love, Anger, Madness by Marie Vo Chauvet is my choice from this list, from Britta's 1001 books list. And I have a copy. I'm just going to have to look for it. So far, we've identified like 4 books for the 10 before the end challenge. Rumi 24 Runwright Reads Girly wanted to let me know because I didn't ask. I did ask at the beginning. It is 1:52 here now in New York City because we moved over from daylight saving time. We're on regular Eastern Standard Time right now. So Rumi is 6 hours ahead. It is 7:42 back then. Now it's 7:52 p.m. for her. And she said, I want to finish the one book I still haven't finished. By the way, it's not a long one either. What was the title? Was it Enter Ghost? Was it Enter Ghost that you were reading? The book by the it was on the Booker long list. It was not Booker. It was on the BookTube prize list. I think I read it. You know what? I'm confusing it. Tell me the title of the book that you were reading. She said, I want to finish the one book I still haven't finished. By the way, it's not a long one either. I don't know. I just watch videos instead. I read it when I'm kind of bored or something. That's fine. That's fine. Not everybody reads all the time. I don't read all the time. I watch videos when I am alone. I watched two videos. I watch videos of my friends on YouTube or people that I consider to be my friends, even if we haven't met in real life. And I watch movies. Like right now, it is prime Hallmark movie, Lifetime movie, romance movie watching. So I will watch those sometimes when I am supposed to be sleeping. Um, Sharon said, I understand that. Did that this year with Daniel Black and had to take a break. Yeah, Daniel Black. Okay, so Ruby, you're going to go get your book. That's great. Yeah, we should do a little reading sprint in a little while. So far, these are the books that I have identified. Another challenge that I have is to read some of the books from the Booker Prize winning list. So if you have been here for some time, you may know I am like fascinated by the Booker Prize. I love the Booker Prize. And one day, it's City of Ghosts. Yes, I remember now. The original name in English is City of Ghosts. Yeah, I haven't read that. When you've finished City of Ghosts, you need to, share your recommendation or caveat. Let us know how you find it. So these shelves up here, the top shelf and some of this second shelf are books that have won the Booker Prize. And I've read quite a few of them. I started doing the series where I was reviewing them in order. So I was making individual reviews of each of the books by year. So I need to get back to that project, but we'll pick that up sometime. We'll pick that up sometime soon. Oh, it's Victoria Schwab. Not is that the same person as V.E. Schwab? She just used a different name to keep her readership separate, right? I think is that how that works. Yeah. So I just need to pick one of these Booker winners that I haven't yet read. A lot of the short, because there are some shorter books. Historically, in the first few years of the Booker Prize history, the books that won the Booker Prize used to be pretty short, pretty small books. So I'll show you some examples. So this is one of the first books. Look how small. It is 220 something pages. 220 pages. This is the book that won in 1970. This is the book that won in 1987. Penelope Lively's Moon Tiger was 207 pages. Okay. Nadine Gordimer, Conservationist, won the Booker in... Some of these I have post-its on it to tell me the date when the year when it won. The Conservationist was in 1972. 1972, Nadine Gordimer, South African author, 268 pages. Okay, so here's another one. The Life and Times of Michael Kay by J.M. Coetzee, another South African author, slim volume. This was 184 pages. Excellent read. Excellent read. By comparison, one of the biggest books that I own, The Luminaries by Eleanor Catton, which won the Booker in 2013, is also one of the most complex books I've ever read and enjoyed, 822 pages. So just for comparison, that's all we're doing. We're not saying anything bad. Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel won the Booker. This is 530 something pages. Won the Booker in what year did this win? 2009, right? 2009. Other big books like The Line of Beauty by Alan Hollinghurst, another Booker winner. The Blind Assassin by Margaret Atwood, another Booker winner, really big. So I was actually really interested when this won the Booker a couple of years ago. This is Orbital by Samantha Harvey, which I haven't yet read. It's only 206 pages. I haven't yet read it. And I was thinking that I would read it now. And I may still change to this. However, I had put Moon Tiger, no, not Moon Tiger, The Bone People. I had put The Bone People on another list that I wanted to read earlier this year. I had put The Bone People on a list of books that I wanted to read for the Facebook challenge that I was participating in during the summer and early fall. And I didn't get to it. Oh, this came off of the other book. So I am thinking that I will try to read this one just because I had pulled it out for another reason and didn't get to it. It is over 400 pages, 435 pages, which when I'm in a time crunch, I don't really necessarily want to read a book this length, but it's going to check a lot of boxes. It's set in New Zealand. I haven't yet read anything from that part of the world this year. And, one of the things that I like to do is to mark in colors, mark in countries on my little map in my reading journal. And so that will help me to, color in some more things. Australia is the Oceania continents. Nothing. There's no color here. So I'm going to try to get to The Bone People is what I'm saying. So that's my book that I want to read for the Booker Prize this year. In a tower on the New Zealand sea lives Carowyn Holmes, part Maori, part European, an artist estranged from her art, a woman in exile from her family. So I will try to read this one. This is the book that I'm going to try to read. Carrie Holm, who is Maori, she grew up in Christchurch and Moraki, New Zealand. I've owned this book for several years and I haven't yet read it. So this is from 1983 and I should read it. So that's the book that I am. Yeah, it's a long book. We got some big books. We got some big books around here. I think if some of the books were a little shorter, we'd get to them a little faster. But, sometimes when you look at a book and it looks a little longer than you think you have time for, you're just not sure. So these are 3 physical books that I have already, plus 2 that I am still needing to find. The Muriel Spark book from the library and the book from Britta's list, Love, Anger, Madness. It's somewhere, I think, with my Caribbean books because the author is a Haitian woman. Anyway, aside from that, like I told you, I have a lot of lists. I have a lot of lists because when I hear about books, especially when books appear on lists. I love book lists. I love a good book list. I watch Jeopardy, and quite often, I think there's not a single Jeopardy competition, and it's not a single Jeopardy game that doesn't mention some books. There's usually a category of questions or clues that are about books, titles, or authors, or settings. And sometimes I hear books mentioned, and I'm like, I need to read that book because I didn't know that answer. So, okay, Rumi, we'll see you in a few minutes. Yeah. So some of these are books that I have heard about or had conversations with somebody about, and feel like I need to read it for my own personal edification. Is that a word? I hear that word used, but I don't know if it's a real word. So I came up with a big TBR a few years ago now, about maybe 4 or so years ago. I think I started in 2022. I came up with a list of books that I want to read, a big TBR, titles that I want to read because I didn't necessarily read all the books from the Western canon when I was in school. So, books that I feel like a lot of people have read, but I haven't because they weren't books that I read in school, or, yeah, yeah. So, some of them are on these pages and these pages. So I just made a little graphic with some of the covers. And so these are some books that I hear about frequently or see mentioned frequently in lots of places. Books that have been compared to other books, books that have been retold, books that have been adapted, or just books that are mentioned in pop culture, books that are mentioned in places. Some of these are from the canon, some of them are not. They're just popular books. And so I made a little graphic so I could kind of cross them off as I read them. So on the pages, I've indicated some of the books that I have already read. Like I read Death Comes for the Archbishop by Willa Cather, Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, Matilda by Roald Dahl. These are some of the books. These are some books that I have read from these lists already. A couple of these are books that I read earlier, like books that I read as a child, like Little Women by Louisa Alcott. But I want to reread because when I was a child, I read Little Women. I had no idea there was a Little Men. So I'd like to read them both as companions, that kind of thing. So these are some books that I wanted to read over a few years. And I have made some progress on these lists, but I wanted to choose something else from here just to see how many of these are books that I'm even interested in. I reserve the right, of course, once I've started the book to decide whether I want to continue with it or not. Quite a few of these are bigger books, and I might not be interested enough to really dedicate the time that a big book will take to read. But they are books that I think I want to at least peruse. So, from this pretty extensive list, I have a few titles. One is, well, and it's funny because from the list, I'm going to read a book that's actually not on the list. I have an Anthony Trollope book on here, but I'm replacing it with his more popular Barchester Tower series. I think that's how it's called. So even though on here I have Can You Forgive Her by Anthony Trollope, a couple of years ago I started reading it and I didn't get very far into the book. And I think it was just maybe that's not the book that I needed to start with him. So I'm going to read The Warden by Anthony Trollope. So I'm actually going to replace one of these covers with Anthony Trollope's The Warden, and I'm going to be buddy reading that with my friends. So that is my pick from the 2025 extensive TBR, which is really just a continuation of the 2024 TBR, which was continuing from 2023, which continued from 2022. We're just going to keep doing this until we make enough progress that we can either cross off all the books or have made decisions about not